As a lot of you might be aware, we are facing a shutdown. And some of you have never been through a shutdown before. So in this video, we're going to talk about what does that mean to you, in particular, those of us who are using services from the government, also those of us who may be doing business with the government, and then some of us who may be new government employees. What does that mean for you? We're going to talk about all of that in this video, and I'm going to share some of my experiences of what I went through as a small business going through a previous shutdown and what happened to me. So let's dive right in. 2025, we're looking at a potential shutdown of the government. And so what are we going to say? How does that affect you, the contractor? And so when we look at it, a lot of times who's being affected the most are federal workers. But because we all use federal services, that flows down to us. So 750,000 federal workers being affected. They go without pay, creating some financial hardship. A lot of the national parks get closed. In the historical times, remember, the trash was piling up on a lot of the national parks. Small businesses, people like me and you, they freeze our payments, right? So they're not processing payments, they're not processing grants. So if you have different projects ongoing, that's a potential issue that maybe impact you. And then travel delays, right? So again, essential staff will be the only ones working, non-essential staff will not be working. So there could be some travel delays as well if this continues. So let's break down what's happening here with the government and why are we in this position. So again, Congress must pass a spending bill. The deadline was missed and because they primarily could not reach a budget over, different issues. And then essentially the government shutdown begins. So they can't agree to a spending bill. They can't agree over issues. The deadline's missed. No budget happened. And so now that's where the shutdown begins. So let's talk about the first group. Again, federal workforce. I'm now here in Arlington, Virginia. So a lot of the people around me are government employees. But let's talk about essential versus non-essential because that is the important thing to note here, right? So again, non-essential, which again, I didn't make these definitions up, but non-essential like NASA scientists, park rangers, IRS auditors, administrative staff. And then essential would be air traffic controllers, TSA agents, border patrol, active military, and hospital staff. But again, depending upon where you fall into one of those categories will determine if or not you continue working. And then group number two, everyday Americans, like people like us. So we talked about travel delays, services like, it used to be WIC or EBT. Some of those nutrition programs for women, infants, children, they run out of federal funds if we don't approve budgets, right? Again, the national parks piles it with trash, passports, permits, things like that you have to request. So for example, like me right now, I'm selling one of my investment properties and I have a SBA loan against that property. I'm trying to get from the SBA the information to close on this deal because I'm supposed to be closing in 7 days from now. But again, if they're shut down and nobody's at work or in the office, they can't give the payoff. I can't sell my property. And so you can see how that hurts people like myself because it's not just in doing business as a contractor, but other essential services like if you're trying to get loan payoff requests, or if you've got anything that you have tied with government people, persons that you need their services, you need their help. A lot of times they tell them not to come to work. And I remember going back to my personal experiences, instances where I was doing a project with the national parks and they literally said, do not come to work, do not answer the phones. And if you did, you risk getting in trouble as a government employee. And so we literally, in the middle of a project that we had just started. And what's interesting about our particular case was that even though we had just started this project and they did a shutdown, the contract said that we had to continue working through the shutdown. So what they did was they allowed the person who managed the facilities to continue working, but the people that were in the office approving our payments, approving the change orders or any type of, in federal, it's called REA, it's a request for equitable adjustment. So anybody approving any type of changes to the contract, they were not there. But the person that was managing the actual facilities, they allowed that person to stay in position. And so we were able to continue the project. But mind you, we had to do the project without getting any type of compensation. So we had to float all of that capital during that period of time. And again, I'll tell you about kind of what the outcome was of that is, but historically, this is not new. This is something that's been happening since the Reagan era in the 80s and 90s, and then in the Clinton era. We had two major shutdowns as well, 5 and 21 days. Again, it was over Medicare funding. Again, a lot of this stuff was the same issues historically, right? So again, federal spending, how the money is going to be spent. New administration comes in, they have different priorities. So again, in the Clinton era, 5 days and 21 days. over Medicaid funding, government spending, right? Again, 800,000 workers. When Obama came in office, 16-day shutdown. Again, Affordable Care Act, more federal spending. And then in 2018, 2019, which was the longest shutdown, about 35 days. Again, this was regarding the border wall project, and it impacted 800,000 workers and $3 billion. Now, that is what happened during those times. I can tell you during the eras where, for example, like the 2013 era with Obama, where they had this shutdown, the amount of spending that took place increased dramatically, because when they opened back up for business, they had to then turn around and still spend the money to get these things done. So what happens to small businesses like ourselves? Payments are frozen. Again, cash flow is king. So again, making sure that even as I'm talking, I've had some conversations with people that do lending to small businesses, that do lending to people who are supporting federal government. And they said to me, in fact, I just had lunch with someone yesterday, and he said, look, I'm telling all of our small businesses that to only pay essential staff, similar to the government. So they are advising their clients to act as you are a federal agency. So whatever the government's doing and the agency is doing, they are encouraging their clients to do the same thing. Unfortunately, unlike government employees, we don't get back pay. So when this thing gets sorted out, the government employees are going to get back pay for the time that was missed. But we, as a small businesses, we don't get to get back pay, right? Also, outstanding invoices. You're probably not going to get paid on those because the people are not going to be in the offices. So again, cash flow is king. We already know a lot of us are struggling in that area because of the situation that we're not already making large profits anyways. We don't have huge margins. We don't have private equity behind us, or we don't have any type of investment outside capital. So we're funding this with our own out-of-pocket money. We're already tight on margins. And so, it is difficult for us. Fortunately, when we were in that situation, we had private sector commercial jobs that were helping us as well. And I've been in this situation a couple times with several projects. And again, the private sector work helped save us and get us over the hump until things picked up again. So what are some action plans, some steps that you can do? One, obviously identify your agency. We've said this in some previous content. If you're working with the DoD, typically you're safe with DoD contracts because DoD has what they call a continuing resolution that continues to fund DoD throughout these types of periods. So typically, if you're in a DoD contract, you're usually safe. It's the non-DoD agencies that you've got to worry about. So those are high risk of work stoppage, payment delays, things like that. Again, always communicate with the contracting officer, communicate with whoever is your contracting officer representative. Talk about if your projects are funded through a continuing resolution, and will your work or payments be stopped? Again, in my particular case, our payments were stopped, but the work continued. And they even said that if we did not finish on time, we could be subject to liquidated damages, which seems cruel and harsh considering that the government was shut down. But that was the way it was. Like I've said in some previous content, life was not fair. I don't expect it to be fair. And I continue to live under that mantra that things are just not going to be fair. And I'm okay with it. I've already accepted that reality. So for everyone else out there, again, be prepared, look at your travel plans and see if the airports are affected or the places you're traveling could be affected. Again, for passports, federal permits, things like that. Unfortunately, I know people who have certain applications being processed with the government for their certifications. And so those things could be on delay. And then for everyday people, things like passports as well. Any type of federal permits, those things will be impacted by this. Local food banks and charities, all of those things where the government is feeding into them, right? The services, dollars, sending them things, those things are they're going to be impacted also. But the good thing is what I've seen historically is that when the government starts up again, what happens is ultimately they still have all the work that needs to be accomplished. So there usually becomes a huge backlog of work. So for me, this is not terrible because when they come back, there's a whole huge backlog of work. And unfortunately, yeah, you may not have all the staff and everything to do it, but the companies who are prepared to be able to capitalize, they're going to have to be the ones that actually, take advantage of all of this additional work. There's a huge spending surge. So again, all this money still has to be spent. Remember, there's things that need to be done logistically wise. They got to move and transport different items across the country. And so all this stuff, they're going to basically have to make up for lost time. So at the end of the day, we'll come to a resolution. And so on the spending bill, we don't have a choice. But what will happen is there'll essentially be less competition for those of us who are ready and able to take advantage when we come out of this thing. So again, it's not your fault. It's Congress's failure. Cash flows Unfortunately, if you're already not prepared, there's nothing I can tell you at this point. This is the reason why we encourage people to seek additional lines of capital, even if they don't need it. But a lot of us don't have that choice. So I'm not even going to sit here and pretend like as if we all have the luxury to go to a bank and pull out $2 or $3 million. It hurts everyone because, again, if you're running operations and you've got employees and you can't no longer pay those employees, freaking it stinks. And then sometimes you lose good people. I've lost good people because of delay in projects in the private sector, in the commercial world, right? So they delayed me. I had someone lined up that could execute the work. Because of the delays, that company had to continue working. They got to continue servicing their people. And then by the time the project started again, I lost a good contractor. And now I had to deal with someone else that was not as great. And then unfortunately for me, that caused us to have the project not turn out as great as I want it to be because of that loss. So this is the challenge that we all face when these things happen to us. But again, what I've seen is there's always opportunities after the storm. So if you go back and think about COVID and what happened after COVID, there was huge opportunities during COVID time, right? And after the 2007, 2008 crash, huge opportunities after that time as well. So whenever there's chaos, there's always opportunity that flows from the chaos. So I'm always going to be the guy looking for the opportunity and seeing what's going to happen next. So if you do that and you have that type of outlook, then keep your eyes open, talk to people, and figure out kind of where things are going, and so that you can be prepared for whatever the next wave opportunities are flowing for you, your company, and also for the country. See you next video.